I'd like to call to order the August 12th, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. The first item on the agenda is a proposed executive session. Among the things that we may discuss are employment of a public officer or employee, receiving confidential attorney-client communication for the purpose of providing legal services to the board. And I don't think we'll talk about labor negotiations or real estate. I would entertain a motion to find that what we're about to discuss, premature knowledge of what we're about to discuss in executive session would put the school district at a significant disadvantage. Michelle moves. Do I have a second? Alyssa seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session. Michelle moves.
Second.
Tom seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we're in executive session. We're gonna go in with Joe Clark, our superintendent, and we will return around 6 p.m.
We're gonna stay here. You're good to go.
And you're right.
All right, thank you. All right, I'd like to call back into order the August 12th, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School District School Board. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is announcements. Does the board have any announcements? All right, the next item is to review and accept the agenda. So we just had an executive session. I should mention that we did talk about labor negotiations, in addition to employment of a public officer or employee. For the rest of the meeting, we have comments from the public, student representative report. Then we have a community forum with 2 topics. The first draft of the So after the student representative. It's okay, I can wait.
You wanna mute yourself to your phone. Mute yourself and you'll be here some speaker.
Thank you. My apologies. But it is muted, just like, look like it.
Cool. So, all right, so to start over, what we've got remaining are comments from the public, then student representative report, then a community forum with 2 topics. The first draft of the ENS policy update, and if there's any initial questions from the community about the NESDEC best use study that we talked about at our last meeting. Then we have discussion of executive limitation 2.4 financial condition and activities. And the 2026-27 academic calendar, including holidays. And then we move on to action items, designating an authorized contract signatory and contracting authority, designating a board member to serve on Act 170 merger committee, approving the VSBA superintendent evaluation contract, and then monitoring report 2.2 treatment of staff, and monitoring report 2.1 treatment of students and parents and guardians, and then the superintendent's report. And then consent agenda. And that's it. So I would propose that just based on past experience, we will get to the community forum pretty quick. And so I wonder if we should move the discussion items and maybe the discussion item before the community forum, so that we make the community forum a little bit later in the evening. that is the 2/3 of the board amenable to that change?
I'm fine with that, but I did have I guess it's a comment, and I'm not sure if it's an agenda change or if we just let the discussion happen, but it is about. Executive limitation 2.4. And I'm wondering if we should really be tabling that as our next. It's really the work of the board to set policy, revise policy. And following the ends updates, I believe we have a plan to plan reviewing all of the executive limitations, so. I guess part of it is just a question. I'm wondering about the urgency and can we discuss it but not call it a first reading?
So as a matter of scheduling, I think that we should. Talk about it, even if maybe the way that it was phrased on the agenda is not perfect.
Okay.
And should we just strike first reading?
Right, we should strike first reading.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, right. And I wonder if we should even. Yeah, okay, so that'll be the change that we'll make, is just moving discussion item before community forum.
Also, I know Lowen's not here yet, but I don't think we have a student report just because like school hasn't been happening over the summer, so I just wanted to let you guys know that.
Okay, so we'll strike. The board okay with striking the student representative report? So in that case, maybe we should actually move the first 3 action items, which basically move the community forum to be all the way down, so it's after the VSB superintendent evaluation, so that it hits more like around 6:30 or 6:45, 7.
Are we gonna get all of those things done by 6:30?
I think we'll probably get through the 2 discussion items and the first 3 action items by 6:45,
The monitoring report will be after.
and then monitor reports after community forum.
Okay, let's do it so we can get started, stay on schedule.
Good, so the board amenable to moving the community forum to be after the VSB superintendent evaluation?
Yes,
Okay, great. So the next item on the agenda is comments from the public. There are 3 opportunities for the public to comment at this time about anything at all. Also, before the board takes action on an action item, but only on the topic that is then being actioned. And also, if this is especially warned community forum, and then only on the topic warned, or topics warned for that community forum. And this is later in this meeting, we will be having a community forum. The board will not respond to public comments unless this meeting is especially designated community forum and the comment is on a topic that's warned on the agenda. And again, this is a community forum. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. Please don't violate anyone's privacy, and official complaints or grievances cannot be filed during public comment. So do we have anybody online or in the room for public comment?
nobody on.
All right. The next item on the agenda, student representative report, was canceled tonight, because we don't have a student representative report. And then we are going to do the community forum after the 3rd action item, to give the community more time to join our meeting if they desire. So the next item on the agenda would be the discussion item, revised executive limitation 2.4, financial condition and activities. So I think, Joe, can you introduce this topic?
Yeah, I'll talk about this a little bit. So what we found is that we had lots of employees throughout the school district that were signing contracts. And it's been many of our experience in my office and in the business office that's typically reserved for the superintendent or his designee or his or her designee. And so the ask was to change executive limitation 2.4 that would make that happen. And also allow me to designate people. So for instance, most contracts would be signed by me. There were some that would be signed by the business office or the Office of Student Services or whatnot. And while we were at it, Elizabeth and April in the business office said, well, while we're doing that, why don't we just clean up the rest of this? So what you'll see are recommendations from the business office about how this executive limitation could be more in line with what our practice is.
And does this also relate to the, okay, sorry. Can you pull it up on your screen?
Yeah. Let me share it first.
Let's see.
Wait a moment.
Just needs to go there.
Nick, are you putting the,
I just assumed it was up there too. Thanks for looking back, Seamus.
it's like, or this case? Board meeting.
That's what
Sorry. Okay, so it sounds like, this is a proposed revision from the superintendent to the board of an executive limitation. And so the board is being asked to consider this, revision.
Yeah, and again, number 10 is the one that is, this whole policy was rewritten so we could add number 10. So we wanted 10 and then we just cleaned up the rest to make it read better and be in line with what we're doing. Number 10 is allow a person who has not been formally designated by the board to execute a contract on behalf of the district. So, and what our practice then would be, we'd ask the board annually at the organizational meeting to make a motion that I am the superintendent or the designee is the one who has the authority to enter into contracts. And so all contracts, except those I designate to a few folks at that table would come through me instead of, for example, principals signing off on things or custodians signing off on things or whatnot.
So this makes things more strict.
It makes it more strict, who could enter into contracts on behalf of the board. Everybody could still recommend contracts. Everybody will still be able to do their job. They just could not sign a contract.
Okay.
Interesting, because number 10 makes it sound like you're making less.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
No, I was
Oh,
reading it too.
because
It's
it's
just-
the limitation on the top, yeah.
Yeah,
Still not.
exactly, yeah. So, yeah, so, and then on top of that, the other additions were.
Yeah, the other stuff is, there's nothing substantive in those are just, hey, this sentence is kind of awkward or goofy and it's.
So can you give us a couple examples of those?
I can, with a reminder that these come from. the
That's
business
standard
office.
practice where I work, pass, just FYI.
What's that?
I said that's standard practice where I work in Northwest School District and other school districts that I've worked at.
With the
in the
signing of
past.
contracts.
The superintendent signed the contracts, like, I would be in contracts for like job postings or some sort of employment and you have to bring it to the
Yeah.
superintendent just to sign it.
That had always been mine too, again, from a different state, it would be the treasurer or the superintendent who could sign the contract. Like number 6, to cross out number 6, make a single unbudgeted purchase or commitment of greater than $25,000 or the addition of a 0.5 FTE teacher. We thought that those two aren't related, why don't we make those separate items? So we made those separate items.
And you don't, envision that having more contracts to sign will interfere with your other.
No, we've already actually started putting this in practice. We just wanted the board to codify it by adopting it. And, it's been working so far. I do two things. I sign my name and I call meetings. Those are the two skills of superintendents.
I hear that. Like,
Okay, so I think probably we should, take this back. And if people have concerns about this text, email the superintendent. And, then I think in a future, and I guess, if it's okay with us, in a future agenda, we could discuss this as though it were the board's draft instead of the superintendent's draft, and then treat that as a first reading. And things can change from reading to reading. But how are people feeling in general about going in this direction?
I don't mind all of the recommendations and I agree with the centralization of the contracts. It's not an objection to the substance or anything like that. And I have a feeling once we start combing through the executive limitations, we're gonna rely on you and your team heavily to make those revisions and understand what is more efficient and effective from an implementation perspective. I don't think we have to do that. It's just timing. Like, I didn't understand the urgency, but going into a new school year, if you're on the verge of signing a whole bunch of contracts, maybe we should simply make this the
I mean,
first.
the
thing
real
that
behind
we
the
deal
scenes
with.
of this is that the finance office is putting together a new financial handbook for the district. That explains to them step by step, how do you buy something? How do you do a purchase order? How do you do this? How do you get reimbursed? How do you do a recommendation or requisition to go on a PD or whatever? All of that's gonna be in there. So as we're going through this, we're cleaning all this up. This is what we wanna do, is let's quit having people all over the district sign contracts. Let's get it so they get to one or two desks and that's it.
My only reservation is, are there other things we would want to change about this, rather than just the cleanup and the addition of the centralization? And I haven't had any bandwidth to even think about that. So.
Yeah, I think. So I think I understand your concern, Michelle, to be, we were already planning on looking at executive limitations, so it might be a little weird to pick this one out and do it first. But I think you could also argue that the other way and say, well, actually, if we can reduce the amount of work that we face when we do all the executive limitations by taking, fixing one of the executive limitations, it might be just the right thing and the simplest thing to do. So I would personally favor putting a discussion item for the next school board meeting where we bring this draft back, and then we all, of course, have time before then to think about it and discuss it as though we're a first reading and a set of changes that we ourselves have proposed. Are there any objections to that as a way of moving forward? Okay, any other comments about this particular policy? All right, so we'll add that to the agenda for next. And then if you guys have any thoughts or concerns, please do reach out directly to the superintendent and then this is me on that. All right, the next item on the agenda is the 2026-2027 academic calendar. Superintendent.
Yeah, so this is, first of all, thank you for your patience with me as I've worked through this calendar. I thought we had put it to bed. To go through the process just one more time, we adopted the recommended calendar from the Champlain Valley Superintendent's Association. It initially did not include several of the holidays that had been included the prior year, and we got great feedback from our families that we want these to be holidays. And so I worked with the multilingual family council to figure out specifically what were we gonna do for Diwali, because I am not familiar with the holidays, and so I apologize if I'm speaking in ignorance here, but my understanding is Diwali is a holiday that's spread over several days, and different groups celebrate, choose different days to celebrate depending on what their background is, was my best understanding. So I asked the multilingual family to give me what their best advice was for which day we should have off for Diwali. And they gave me the date of November 11th. The other districts in the CVSA who are also making this adjustment all decided to take Tuesday, November 10th off. And we stuck with the 11th on the advice of our council. Later this summer, I got word from some parents who celebrate Diwali that we made a mistake, that the 11th was not really a good day for us to take, that the 11th was really a different holiday that was only celebrated by a certain group of people, and that the 10th would be more appropriate. And so in that time, we hired a new director of equity, belonging and family engagement. She's actually joining us online today. She gave her advice. I went back to the family council, and more of them discussed it. And they came back with, actually the 10th probably would have been a more appropriate day for us. I know that changing the calendar this late in the game is disruptive to all sorts of things. So I don't do this lightly, but I think that if we're going to honor our families, we should honor the day that we should do. And if we do it now, it would be better than doing it later. And the other side note that I hear from principals is that, when we have a day where a bunch of area schools are off and we're not, we can't get subs, or we have staff that's out because of childcare. And we should not make a decision on holidays based on our staff's childcare, but that's a real thing to consider. So if all the other schools were off on the 10th and we were off on the 11th, there might be some disruption there. So my recommendation would be to allow me to change the Diwali this year from the 11th to the 10th. And I have my first meeting with the Champlain Valley Superintendent Association this Friday, and we'll start talking about next year's calendar. And I can promise you, I will be much more diligent in ensuring that our calendar makes sense before I bring it to you next year.
The 11th is Veterans Day.
It's Veterans Day
Is that
also.
typically a holiday for the school district?
No, Veterans Day is not. So we would be off on November 3rd, I think is election day, is a professional development day, and then the following Tuesday, the 10th would be Diwali.
Okay, so this is a discussion item. Do we need to take action on it later, or?
I don't believe you need to take action at all, but I don't want to do it without kind of the blessing of the board, hey, it's okay to do this kind of thing.
So does the board have any objections or concerns that we want the superintendent to know about?
Just move it Wednesday to Tuesday, right?
Wednesday to Tuesday, and I will inform parents as soon as tomorrow that we've made this change.
Well, I just appreciate that you are taking action when you get more information. And also, I do appreciate your apologizing for the changes.
Yeah.
But also, you didn't come into it the context of, we previously didn't have these days off, then we did have them off, then we took them away. That's not fair. And I really appreciate you listening to that and making changes, so.
I'm always willing to admit when we screwed up. That's what I do best, so.
The online calendar will be updated.
Yep, we'll get it all updated tomorrow. And our principals are probably putting it in their newsletters as we speak.
All right, the next item on the agenda, we're switching over to action items. And again, this is because we delayed the community forum into a little bit later in the meeting to give anybody who wants to join a chance to log in. So right now, the action item is designate authorized contract signatories and delegate contracting authority pursuant to 16 VSA 563-16. Superintendent, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is the actual Vermont code that allows you to designate or requires you to designate a contract signatory. So even though we are delaying the work on the ends policy, this would legitimize the practice that we put in where I'm already doing this. The executive limitations are different from what state laws. So we want to do this, and then we change the executive limitations to match the law. So I would ask that you designate me and my designees as the contract signatories for the district. And then we would do this on an annual basis.
So,
So our executive limitation is not compliant with Vermont.
Correct. But it's not.
Okay.
It is not.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think our current executive limitation mentions it at all. We wanted to put an executive
Yeah.
limitation in to match what the law was. So I don't think it's non-compliant. I just think it's negligent.
so would a motion along the lines of, I move to authorize Superintendent Joe Clark and his designees as the contracting authority pursuant to 16 VSA 563-16, the kind of motion that you're thinking
Yeah,
about?
yes, that's what I would hope for.
So well, is there any board discussion on this topic? Is this we don't have to rush on this. We can decide not to do this.
Yeah.
But any concerns or thoughts about this? Well, I would entertain a motion to designate Superintendent Joe Clark and his designees as contracting authorities pursuant to 16 VSA 563-16. Michelle moves.
A second.
Emily seconds. Is there any discussion? And since this is an action item, we will be taking public comment on it. Is there anybody online? All right, all those in favor? Aye. The motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is also an action item. It is designating a board member to serve on the Act 170 merger committee. So this is a meatier subject. There were two committees formed, right? One of them is the CISA committee, which we designated Joe to be on. And then there is the merger committee, which is, I think, where we go and meet the other school districts and make a good faith effort to consolidate, if that makes sense.
Yes, and that one's required to be a school board.
Right. So Superintendent, do you have any thoughts on this question?
I don't have any thoughts. I thank whoever steps up to do it. I found myself to be the chair of the CISA board, so. So good luck to whoever does this.
So I am, just as information, I'm meeting with the chair of Winooski board tomorrow. I think it's kind of just an informal meeting. But I would be willing to serve on the Act 170 merger committee. But, you know, I think if you were to put me on that committee, I think that I should say that, you know, of course, I would try to represent the majority of the board in what I was pushing for, but my own personal beliefs on the merger question are that consolidation is probably a good thing for Vermont school districts to, you know, for lots of different reasons. So you guys don't want somebody on the merger committee who is broadly in favor of consolidation. You probably shouldn't pick me.
I think your service might change your opinion, but I don't think that's something that would stop me from having you be on there.
Yeah, I don't know, we don't all necessarily agree or even know what we feel about this. I think most of what I'm hearing is people are not interested in consolidation, so it could be interesting to have your voice there as part of the conversation. I don't think you would change the trajectory of Vermont consolidation on your own. So, I don't know, I trust that you would know how the board would feel about it as we continue to talk, and that you would represent us, and it would be responsible for you to say what your feelings are on it as well, and enjoy and add to that conversation, so.
Yeah, I guess I'm not worried about you not representing like the board as a whole, because I feel like we have different opinions, and we haven't talked about that, but. Would this person be representing like the voters of South Burlington or like South Burlington as a whole? Not that you know how South Burlington feels, but just kind of like the best. Having South Burlington's best intention in mind, I guess. Versus
I think,
like your own
I think, yes, I think these are the committees that are proportionally assigned seats based on. Am I thinking of the weighted pupils?
I don't know.
No, that's.
But I
what I'm
think,
saying.
but I don't think this board has any power. I think you're a
Right.
recommendation board, so.
Right.
If there ever were to be a merger, it would go before the public to vote on.
My understanding is it's fact finding, is that,
Correct.
is
And what's,
our leading authority here.
but yes, that I would just echo what Superintendent Clark just said, and I'm under the impression one of the key things is that anything has to go before the full city municipalities, has to have a vote, so you don't know where the people are, but any consolidation is required to have a vote of the stuff. But your service, my understanding would be fact finding, to get that information during the discussion.
And I think good faith was in there, so I think maybe somebody with maybe a different perspective would cause people to do it in good faith, right? Instead of a bunch of people who all have the same opinion.
Any other thoughts on this topic? From the legislative perspective, is there any other explanation of what this is about that you might wanna?
No, but I recall the key thing is they want to have these votes for, I want to say town meeting of 2027, so that seems like a long way away, but that time goes fast, so. Thank you for being interested in doing it, if nobody else is interested.
Is it town meeting 2027, so this coming March?
I'm sorry, 28.
28,
Yeah,
yeah.
2028, I apologize.
Yeah.
A year plus,
Thank you.
we moved that up.
Well, anybody wants to?
Oh, I moved that, Seamus is, the designated the board member to serve on the Act 170 merger committee.
Second.
Emily moves, Dan seconds. Is there any discussion? And this is an action item, so we'll be taking public comment. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. And then the final thing that we'll do before we do the community forum is approving the VSBA superintendent evaluation contract. So last year was the first year that this board decided to use the VSBA superintendent evaluation service to help us with the superintendent evaluation process that's required every year by state law. And I think broadly, the board was appreciative of how the VSBA made it complete and efficient. And if you'll remember, they sent out surveys to the board, to staff, etc. So this is a question for the board is whether we want to do that again for this year. And so they've sent a contract, and the price is this, I think it's the same as last year, or maybe I can bring it up on the screen here. So the price is $2,500. And it's the same service as last year. So are there any thoughts about that, or want to do that again this year?
Yeah, I thought it was effective. I thought we were able to give some good feedback and, especially compared to, I've only done this twice and the first time was, I don't think was effective, and the difference between the two was striking. $2,500 is a lot of money, and that's a, money that we're handing over, but I think it could be helpful in our second year as this kind of a board, and then maybe, in the future, we don't have to do it every year perhaps, but I think it could be helpful.
Yeah, I think because the last evaluation was not a full year of, is that correct? So I think that.
Right. I would entertain a motion to authorize the chair to sign the VSBA superintendent evaluation contract for the coming year.
I'll make the motion.
Dan moved, Michelle seconds. Any discussion? And this is an action item, so we'll be taking public comment. Anybody?
Nobody else.
All those in favor?
I-
Aye. All right. So, at this point, it's 6:37, so, we are going to move on to the community forum. And I, for some reason, am not able to share from my laptop. If I send you something, Joe, are you able to?
I am.
So, Michelle, do you want to describe what we've been doing and where we're at?
Sure, I prepared a presentation, but I think it was most like everybody here has seen the report at this point, and the presentation repeats that, but maybe it'll make sense because I don't know if it was shared with all of staff and everything.
I
So
think it could be helpful
Okay.
to.
it's just a few slides, and then I think Seamus will do, since you were able to prepare the side by side. I'll just stop before I get to the side by side
Okay.
of my slides, which are very clunky relative or compared to what Seamus was able to put together. So let me go.
And I think I'll be able to share. Somebody will go. So the concept of a community forum at the South Burlington School District is that it's the sections of our meetings where we will go back and forth if any member of the public actually wants to talk about something, which we normally try to limit in order to get the board's business done. And this community forum is on two different topics. The first one is about our ends policy update. And our ends policy is kind of like the constitution of the district. It lays out, what the district is for and how the superintendent is supposed to run it. And it's a document that hasn't been updated for 10 years. And so this board, starting back in January, began a process of looking at that. All right. So this is a community forum, so at any point, if there's anybody in the public.
Cause I'm speaking here to people that have seen it mostly, but
Yeah.
don't have folks that haven't, so. It feels funny to be speaking to you, but not able to see you.
Yes, and so anybody can interrupt if they want to, and then we can talk about what we're looking at.
Yeah, all questions, clarification or otherwise, absolutely. So what we did is prepared a report, and that is actually posted online. It was posted, I think, yesterday or today. That is really a draft, and this is about sharing the results of the process so far. Those results being a preliminary draft. This isn't considered a first reading. This is a draft based on the process as we've implemented it so far. So a couple of fun quotes. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Nice condensed reference from Lewis Carroll. And really the meaning there is that a lack of clear goals means any choice of action will suffice, though it may not lead to a meaningful outcome. Kind of teeing up where we want to go with this. So, and of course, Yogi Berra said it too, if you don't know where you're going, you will end up someplace else. And so this really is why we need to define where we're going, and we need to take a lot of care in doing that. This process started back in January. So before we review this first draft of the updated ends policies, I wanted to ground the discussion in the larger context of governance, responsibilities, and process. It's important for our discussion as we move forward to understand where this draft came from. It didn't just materialize out of thin air, and it has a lot of background and rationale. So just a reminder, I think everybody here knows this was really for the benefit of public if they showed up and they're just engaging in this process now. But just to ground us in what an actual ends policy is, it's a statement that describes student outcomes valued by the South Burlington community and their reason for being. So sometimes this is referred to as their worth or purpose. And the board is responsible for establishing the ends consistent with community values, and the district is responsible for the means to achieve those ends. This is a really important distinction, and it can be really difficult to keep in mind as we look at all of the feedback that was collected and as we draft these and as we think about these drafts. The tendency is quite strong to start throwing in the means, right? And moving away from the big picture outcomes and start talking about the ways to get those, similar to solutioning when you're working on a new design. Everybody wants to jump straight to the solution. When our ends policies set, well, they're set when the organization first determines that it wants to govern itself under policy governance principles. And in this case, it's been more than 10 years since the South Burlington ends policies were reviewed. So we did start back in January talking about a process to do just that. And I think this is probably the last one I'll share for now, which is this really dives into the process, and it's really hard for me to see in presenter view, so I think that might change. Give me just 1 second to get out of this view. I won't be able to read it. And then we go into. Okay. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what we said we would do, what we did, what the results were, and some of the principles that we may not have talked about when we were setting up process and having meetings, public forums, focus groups, in our surveys, which are some principles that we applied while we were drafting. And so what we said we were going to do is conduct a rigorous, open, and comprehensive process with two main goals. One, to collect extensive feedback from community through both informal and formal processes. And then two, very simply, to use that feedback, but not simply, to use that feedback to inform ends policy revisions. What we did is we chose a multi-method approach, which basically includes informal and formal to allow people to come to us and talk to us in public forums, for us to talk to folks one-on-one. But then we also engaged a consultant to do a more targeted set of activities to lead those and design those and conduct those, and then independently collect that feedback as well for us. And so our consultant conducted quite a few focus groups and a community survey. She wrote a report for us that's also posted and is referenced in our preliminary board report to the community. And the results are generally these, like, this is really high level. I don't want to take too much time going because I know probably most folks are interested in more in talking about the language, which is appropriate. But the things that shook out on top of all of the feedback that was collected, there was even some secondary feedback. Thank you to Joe for all of the work that he did early in his starting couple of months with us in South Burlington to conduct the 3Q interviews, and at the end of the year, using time with his student advisory board to talk about ends, and they gave us some amazing feedback. We had the middle school peer leadership group come to us in a public forum and share their thoughts on ends, and they did so openly and eloquently. They gave us some really great feedback. But top things: academic rigor, return to increase of, this was a theme that ran throughout. Skills for life and learning success. We heard a lot from a lot of different people about focusing on those skills that support continuous learning, that support student accountability, that support all of those transferable skills that we talk about, that students take with them from class to class and subject to subject and job to job as they move forward and prepare for adult life. We talked a lot, we got a lot of input about emphasizing that there are multiple pathways. A college path is not the only path. And so we wanted to make sure that we, when we drafted the ends, that we respected that input from community members as well. So you'll see some of that as we take a look. Accountability and trust is a huge topic that shook out of all of that feedback. Financial sustainability, safe, supportive, and inclusive school culture. Hands-on learning, that one, it came up, I believe, a few times. It's included here, although I think the frequency wasn't quite there. It was intriguing to see that. And I think that could look a lot of different ways. And then uplift teachers and community. So these are kind of our top themes that came out. In the report, you'll notice that all of the actual detail is there too, so you can decide for yourself whether or not this accurately captures. Once we created a first draft, we did ask our consultant, Dr. Ann Davidson and Dr. Jill Clark, to review it for a few different things. One of those things was alignment with all of that input that we've been hearing from the community. Alignment, I'll go over some of these other things. In terms of the principles that we established here, we wanted them to take a look at that too. So one of the kind of guiding principles was adherence to policy governance, and that ends, not means focus, that I was talking about. Another is universal design, which I'm sure most folks here are familiar with. But this is really about accessibility in ways that it requires a focus on the language that you use, how you explain the language you use, and even some things that we're thinking of adding, things like alt text and hover text that can provide those explanations for visually impaired folks that can help. I don't know about 508 compliance, that's probably a ways away. But these things were all considered in the actual language that was developed as well. And then the last thing is standards and accountability system alignment. What I mean by that is that we have really nice ends, right? With, I'd say, a lot of nice things about what we want for our students. We've had a lot of conversation that not a lot of those things, or not all of those things, are feel particularly actionable. Things like have a good sense of humor, right? What's the metric for that? So they're really, they're very nicely written, but they're not, you might argue that they're only loosely connected to the standards that are set by the state. And the standards that are set by the state are attached to a whole state and federal accountability system as well, with the state now rolling out the EQS. This is a pretty heavy lift, as I understand it, for the district to be meeting all of the compliance requirements for EQS. What we tried to do here is to the extent possible, align our academic achievement ends in particular with those systems of accountability as well. So kind of one-stop shopping, right? It's one target when it comes to academic achievement targets, as opposed to there's the state one and then there's the district one, and they overlap a little bit or they overlap a lot, but it's never quite explicitly defined. So I think that is where I'll stop. In terms of background, we just wanted, again, to share a little bit about where we've been and where we are right now. And then Seamus has put together a really nice side-by-side. I only had a moment to look at it, but the concept is kind of awesome, where it takes the current ends and the first draft of the proposed ends and lines them up. And then provide some explanation within there. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and share. I will stop sharing.
All right, so, the existing policy is on the left. And the draft from the subcommittee is on the right. And what we tried to do is show for any sentence in the old thing, what happened to it, right? And so like, what Michelle was saying, there are things in the old draft that were removed entirely and not really replaced with anything. And so for example, there's an old end, which is demonstrating independent thought, curiosity, and creativity. And I think the thought from the committee was that this is the sort of thing that comes from, good educational practices anyway, and so we don't have to call it out by itself. So if you click on this, I mean, I'm not gonna click on everything, but we basically got rid of this concept. And we also have quotes from people. And so like a community member said, you can have a lot of fancy priorities, but if you don't hold people accountable, it means nothing. So that's an example of something that was totally removed. Most things are still here, right? So for example, showing cultural and academic competence appropriate to grade and developmental capacity. That's kind of a mouthful. And so what we tied that to is, for example, 111. Students will continuously improve on rigorous Vermont state standards in the core academic subjects. And students will demonstrate grade level proficiency in foundational literacy by the end of grade 3. And we were very careful to not inject anything in here that wasn't backed up by a lot of what we understood to be like good science. Here's another example of something that we just got rid of. Generating alternatives. We didn't think that it was important to have an end that was called generating alternatives. We thought that's just something that falls out of a good educational practices. So we do, however, have things like express views respectfully and make well-supported arguments and decisions. So the point of showing this is just to show that we did consider all of the different concepts that were in the old draft when we were bringing it into the new draft.
I'll point out also just one thing to add to that, since it's the perfect time to add this in, is some of them are compressed into skills that are restated slightly differently. Many of those are actually embedded in the English language arts standards, the math standards, the science standards. And so for anybody looking at that going, how could you possibly not care about critical thinking? Take a look at the standards, right? Like it creates a brevity here, that, you know, like I mentioned, the language is intentionally straightforward and brief, but we tried very hard not to lose content in doing so.
Right, but I literally went through this draft and I searched for the word and. And anywhere that I found the word and, I saw if I could remove an adjective. So we tried to be very compact with the language. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm just going to go through the new draft so that the board has heard the whole thing. And then we can have a board discussion or a community discussion, anybody who wants to contribute. So the new draft starts 1.0, purpose of the South Burlington School District. The South Burlington School District exists so that every student is prepared for adult life through equitable access to and effective engagement with high-quality learning opportunities. 1.1, expected outcome, rigorous academic achievement. Global outcome, students will continuously improve on rigorous academic expectations in core subject areas. 111, academic achievement for students will continuously improve on various Vermont state standards in the core subjects of English, language arts, math, and science. 112, students will demonstrate grade level proficiency in foundational literacy as defined by rigorous Vermont early learning standards by the end of grade 3. 113, multilingual students will continuously improve on rigorous Vermont state English language proficiency standards. 114, achievement gaps for historically marginalized student groups will continuously narrow, with no group showing systematically decreasing achievement. 1.2, expected outcome, skills for success in continuous learning and adult life. Global outcome, students will develop well-rounded skills that prepare them for success in learning and for their transition to adult life. 121, students will benefit from ready access to arts, health, physical education, world language, and co-curricular opportunities. 122, middle and high school students will benefit from ready access to career and technical education. 123, students will demonstrate age-appropriate understanding of how to effectively engage in the classroom, complete assignments and arrive for class on time, express views respectfully and learn from the views of others, make well-supported arguments and decisions, apply financial literacy skills, participate in natural state and local democracy, engage in healthy behaviors, practice inclusion and belonging for all peoples, use technology and artificial intelligence appropriately. 1.3, expected outcome, readiness for adult life. Students and their families will be aware of the diversity of opportunities available to students after high school based on their interests, skills, and passions, well supported as they prepare for their planned next steps after high school, and well prepared for a confident transition to adult life. 131, middle and high school students will understand in age-appropriate ways how to explore, plan, and pursue their next steps after high school, including but not limited to career entry, apprenticeship, 1 or 2 general or technical degree and certification, 4-year plus degree certifications, community, military, or global service. 1.4, expected outcome, community trust and legitimacy. Community members trust that the district is delivering valuable educational opportunities for all students and that the cost is reasonable given limited resources. 141, community members have ready access to evidence-based longitudinal cost-benefit analyses of district performance on expected outcomes 1.1 to 1.3 prior to each budget vote. And 142, ratings provided by representative groups of community members improve over time. So that's our first draft. There's still a lot of words in there, but believe. Any thoughts? Any comments from superintendent, community staff?
It's a lot, so starting anywhere. So
sent an email to Seamus Michelle before, but I don't need to go through my thoughts. I definitely want to hear from the community. This is the community forum. Is anybody online having some thoughts? Have they seen this before now?
This is say pre-first reading, and we will have, I think, 3 more community forums, basically every meeting from now until September 16th.
I'm feeling a void, so I try not to talk a lot in these meetings, but I would highlight one thing under 1.1.4, the word narrow. I just wonder right there. I worry that narrow is if there's students that are not performing very well, students that are performing well between the marginalized student groups. I mean, narrowing could mean that we just have students that are not performing as well. That would narrow the difference in that read. So I just wonder if improve might be, will continuously improve, but.
We tried to do, I think, what you're talking about with no group showing systematically decreasing achievement. But yeah, this is a word salad, a little bit of a word salad.
Yeah, it's a really excellent point. We don't want to suggest to anybody that
They're narrowing.
bringing high achievers down is the way to close the gap.
Thoughts, Joe? Any thoughts on any of these? Is it crazy? I mean,
No, I mean, I at this point really appreciate the getting rid of some of that nebulous, unmeasurable stuff. I think that's good. I like to focus on multiple pathways for kids. As I say, really facetiously, is getting kids out of the basement. You know, this puts this recognizes that college isn't for every student, but we still are going to aspire to that. And or trade school and or military or community service or whatever, that we just want kids to be successful in their lives. I think that's good.
is there anybody concerned about the loss of things like, you know, generating alternatives, cooperating? I think it's easy to criticize those things, but they, you know, if anybody wants to say anything about that.
I think I had felt that the ends before were very lofty and also just nebulous. Did someone say nebulous? Is that, yeah, and I understood that people like to have that North Star and there's a reason behind that, but personally, this makes more sense to me, having it broken down very clearly and understandable goals and things that we can measure. I'm curious about the one that you added that was highlighted, just not even on purpose, but I think it was one about multilingual students. Can you say more about this one? Because it is an addition, is that right?
It is an addition, yeah. It is, a couple of reasons. One, it highlights the need. We have a population of students whose first language isn't English, yet the language of instruction is English. And so those students receive services and English language supports and instruction. They're also assessed under the accountability system. So there is a federal and state accountability expectation that those students will continue to improve to the point where their English language proficiency is sufficient for them to succeed in the classroom in English.
And so it's similar to this up above where you have the English language arts, math, science are tied to Vermont standards as well.
Correct. There's a specific set of standards that guide that whole system. And they're linked. They're actually linked. So when you look at the hot links in there, if you go to those links, they take you to the current location on the AOE's website of those standards. Obviously, that's a drawback because if the AOE makes changes to that, if they update their webpage, whatever, like that has to be monitored to link it, just so that it doesn't go to a dead link.
Right.
You know, you can actually Google and find it if they move it around and if they change standards.
But that's a great, that's a great source to have, because like you said, removing some of the words like demonstrating independent thought, curiosity, and creativity, those are wonderful things. And I think we all want our students to do that. But the fact that it is not easy to measure that in our students. And if it is, those kinds of things are tied back to core academic standards, you can find them.
Yeah, many of them are embedded in those actual standards, only the standards themselves are more explicitly speaking to the educational professionals that are making it happen, right? So they're saying that these are the expectations embedded in these standards for students to meet as they progress through the grades, and they are articulated across the grades as well.
I think it's genius what the group did there by taking those standards. Cause that's what we seem to have had, was a whole bunch of standards listed that were already in the standards, so to make the link that if we do these things well, English learners, arts, math and science, we're gonna take care of many of those other things that had been in the current ends policy.
I just had a quick question about 1.1.1. I saw that there wasn't social studies on there. Was that just because like that Vermont doesn't officially list it as like one of the core academic subjects?
It's a great question. So one thing that I'm struggling with that might need to be updated in here is if you go down to the is it the 1.2 or 1.3? It's the skills. So I think it's 1.2. The first bullet under global outcomes in 1.2. Down, right there. So, students will benefit from ready access to arts, health, physical education, world language, and co-curricular opportunities. Those are also taken straight. So those are the rest of the standards. And I might have missed if there's a social studies or history or humanities. There might be a humanities one that is not in there. Great catch, Oliver. Yeah, I think we want to make sure that that list includes everything that's in those standards to be consistent. And the other part of that thought was that maybe that point actually belongs under 1.1. Worded a little bit differently, like the co-curriculars then might come back down to, like where do co-curriculars go?
Just to like group all of
Guidance
those
from our
together
experts.
under.
Right, but the idea was that we are really emphasizing that core academic, right? So we can have all the AP classes in the world, but if students aren't prepared in their early literacy to read well and access their learning and in their core academics, makes the AP courses pretty hard.
Yep. I would say that my understanding, not as an educator, but just as kind of a parent and a common sense person, is that these ends point us towards narrower but better, like, not trying to do everything, but just trying to do a few things better. So that's part of the philosophy behind this draft is fewer things better rather than more things not as well. Another goal here is that, and we have not achieved it, is, and at least in my mind, is that, an 8th grader should be able to read our ends and it should make sense. And when I say an 8th grader, that is also, I think, is a significant part of our population, whether they're multilingual or whether they are older and, their language abilities have decreased over time. Like, I'll never forget when I, was collecting signatures to run for the school board, and I met one of my elderly neighbors and I showed them a short editorial I'd written, and the wife read it in 10 seconds. And then the husband, it took him, a minute or two to read it, even though it was only, a couple paragraphs long. So it's super important, I think, that this is just my opinion, that we focus on getting the language to be as simple as possible. Because this stuff is meant to reflect the community for then Joe to operationalize it. And I'll just say that this is also a bit of a strange beast because it is a citizen board essentially telling professionals what to do, right? And so whenever we kind of cross the line and get into talking about things that are, really about educational practice, I think it's it's a trade-off, you know, and so I think that, I would hope that, you know, Joe, you solicit feedback from your professional staff, and if they have impolite comments on
Yeah.
our draft, you can make it polite.
But, yeah, a couple of things I'll just say that I do appreciate about this, as we, you know, we've been talking about rigor since probably before I've been here, and that's kind of a term that's been,
Amorphous.
yeah, amorphous, that it was batted around, but I think that, what is done here is, I lost my train of thought. Well, I remember the second thing I was gonna say was, I really appreciate very tangible, students will, be on class on time and turn in their stuff. Right? And those I think really get at, when I was hearing people say, we need to increase the rigor, it's not the same. Those were the kinds of things I was hearing, right? So I think it's good that those are itemized there. Just kidding. No, I can't remember the other thing.
I think I just asked you to forward any impolite comments that you might
Yeah.
get about this, or not forward, but you know,
Clean up.
Yeah.
but we wanna hear it, we wanna hear
Yeah, I mean, it was an effort in self-regulation, I think for everybody, right? People who participated in the process, again, going back to ends means keeping the language focused on ends, right? So one might interpret that, turn in assignments on time to say students need more homework, and the, you know, the resistance that we had to apply internally to not say those kinds of things, even though that's what we were hearing or what we may be thinking, right, too.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, so the other thing that I appreciate is that, I mean, because we've had discussions and debates before about standards-based grading, and I'm glad that the board in this draft did not say, an end is, we will put in list any of those methods that it's up to the professionals to determine what we're doing. I think, again, it's a first draft, but I think it's done well. Nothing there frightens me about how am I going to show this in a mock report.
it. Okay. Any other board comment for today? Any other thoughts from? Great, well then, we will continue to talk about that. Because of open meeting law, we can't collaboratively edit a document together, obviously, unless we're in open session. But if you have thoughts about the draft, please do email them to me, and I will figure out a way to incorporate them without breaking the law.
I do just want to say thank you so much for the work you guys are putting in for this. Really appreciate it, yeah.
All right, the next item on the agenda, we are actually jumping all the way down to our action items, monitoring report 2.2, treatment of staff. So,
Were you gonna do the?
oh yes, the next thing, sorry, we're not done with community forum yet. Did anybody have any questions about the NASDAQ best use survey? We did not receive any community questions about it, so I think we'll just keep asking about it. All right, so now we will move on to monitor report 2.2, treatment of staff.
Awesome. That, turn it over to Daisy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm Daisy Brayton, and I have the privilege and the pleasure of serving as your Director of Human Resources. I am very excited to finally be delivering the monitoring report for 2.2 and treatment of staff. And as I'm getting set up, sharing my screen. Kind of went back and forth as to about, okay, if I'm sharing or do I start with the actual presentation or go directly with the, I do want to start with the monitoring report itself. And, oops. Perfect, wonderful, thank you, nice and big. Okay, so yes, this is the monitoring report for our treatment of staff 2.2. And I like to start out with, these are the 1 through 5 are the items that we are going to be evaluating and talking about. And discussing and showing you data on. I'm not gonna necessarily read to you each one, but the first one talks about having. And again, the language is the superintendent shall not operate without personnel rules or operate without clear and defined rules, without evaluations for staff, without providing effective handling of grievances and complaints and those types of things. Protect against wrongful conditions such as nepotism or preferred treatment. Number 2, discriminate against anyone for for expressing different or dissent or different opinions. Failing to acquaint staff with their protections under these policies, allowing staff to be unprepared in emergency situations, and then failing, the last one is about a positive organizational culture. So those are the items that we're going to be talking about and that this monitoring report is specifically about. I do love the new template. I'll have to say last year was my first year presenting this report, and I think I was like 3 months in. So very clueless. I literally got the presentation handed to me and read it. So I know a lot more this year, and it feels pretty good. But I do love the new templates, and I love that the next part of the monitoring report actually is identifying what does timely treatment look like, not only defining it, but what does success look like? So going through that was very helpful. It was very helpful in evaluating where are we and where do we need to go. So with that, most of this next section I'm actually going to talk about in the presentation, but it was very helpful, quite honestly, to do this monitoring report right at the same time I'm doing my personnel evaluation, so I can see, oh, look at all the lovely things that we have been doing this year. And so sorry, Joe, that a lot of this looks familiar, because yeah, that was on my comments in my evaluation. But we talk about some of the key components, like I said, I'll address in the actual presentation, but it was a wonderful opportunity and to take an intentional look at what are we doing, what do the ends say we should be doing, and where do we need to go from there. I will say overall, and I'll just jump to the end. I know you're gonna go and vote on each of these specific items. But at the end result, I do believe that approaching compliance is the appropriate rating. And now I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail as to why. So going to the actual presentation. So this should all look very familiar. Again, it's the template on how you would like us to do the presentation, talking about what policy governance is, specifically relating to where does this monitoring report fall. And going too fast. Yes, 2.2, treatment of staff. We just talked about what does that include, everything from personnel policies, how do we treat grievances, how do we, everything that we just talked about. And the gaps that in self or looking intentionally at what we are doing. These are some of the gaps that are pretty big. The employee handbook that we had was originally written in 2009. My HR specialist, I believe, was 5 when that happened. So it was last revised in 2014. I will say the family medical leave policies that were in that handbook are illegal now. So we definitely have some gaps to fill there. And then the good news is we're there. So anyway, policies and procedures, having been here and it was very interesting. We had this conversation in the central or the COLT, our leadership team, where as a group, we were all acknowledging that, yes, we have a lot of work to do. And we are all also acknowledging that when we start a project or we have some goals, we start with looking at the overall picture of what you're doing. And then all of a sudden there is, okay, maybe the policy isn't exactly where it should be. And then you're running into, oh, we're inconsistently interpreting it and we are inconsistently applying the interpretation. So that is again, one of the big gaps. Our policies and procedures, our implementation and our interpretation, we have got to be consistent. And we are not. So not only are our policies and procedures and those need to be fine-tuned, but we also need to fine-tune our interpretation and our implementation. The annual support staff performance evaluation system is literally non-existent. Our teachers, on the other hand, are much better than our performance evaluations of our staff. So yes, not only were they not happening, it was not being managed. And we very much need to do that. We need to set the process. Again, we need to identify what and how we want it to look. We need to, what do we want to get from it? How often do we need to do it? Is it a scorecard? Is it an annual conversation? We really need to have and do some intentional revision of very little right now, but it needs to be done. And our staff deserve to have the feedback and and even though we are not, and people tell me this all the time, but we're not a merit-based system. We don't give raises based on how good you do. That doesn't mean you don't give individuals feedback on how they're performing and what their expectations are and what are their goals for next year and those types of things. So, we learned that taking a step back and looking at ourselves, that complaints and concerns and resolutions, while they were being addressed and they were happening, documentation and the tracking of those has again been inconsistent. So while we may have, I'll give an example. I may have an email that says so-and-so was given a disciplinary action. However, can I find the disciplinary action? Is it in their personnel file? No, it's not. So knowing that, okay, if we're gonna have progressive discipline, how can you do that when you don't really know what was there before? That's just one example, but I will say, we are, again, when we get to the gaps and how we're improving, we'll see some good progress on that. Thank you very much for saying the first time around, Daisy, we need to redo this treatment of staff monitoring report because it had no panorama data. And Daisy learned that Daisy didn't even have access to the panorama data. So yes, did I know it existed? Absolutely. Did I know, or did I go in and actually look at so panorama data? We do data for both the students and we also do for staff and teachers. So this monitoring report includes that information and we will go over that here in just. So those are the gaps. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. I'm sorry. And these are the paths to improvement. Clearly, we need to improve the clarity, the accessibility and consistency of our policies, our procedures. I am very happy to say, the former documents, we had two. Besides, I should say, union contracts. For employees, we had what was called an employee handbook. And we had what was called an employee and non-support or non-union support staff benefits and guidelines. We had two different documents. We have now combined those into one document, which will now be known as the employee handbook. It has come a long way, and we will be, it is right now in the final edits. Basically, it's finalized, and we're going to be sharing it at new employee orientation. Will be the first time that it gets into the hands of our employees. All of our employees, not just employees, will be required to review the handbook, acknowledge and sign a receipt that they have, they've received it, they know where it is, they know that they're responsible for knowing it. One of the interesting things that I've learned in doing this process is people didn't realize that the handbook applies to every employee, union and non-union. The difference is if a union contract addresses a specific policy or procedure and identifies it in that contract, the contract supersedes the handbook, if that makes sense. So for example, holidays in the handbook, you got two other different sets of three, excuse me, you have three other different sets of holidays in the teacher union contract, in the support staff contract, and in the administrator contract. They are all different. So yes, it was very interesting to learn that people didn't realize that, yeah, even though I'm in a union, the Estes employee handbook still applies to me. And one of the interesting things that I really like now, the employee handbook has a code of conduct, which we did not have before. So that will be, I think was one of the really important things that we changed. So not only are we doing the employee handbook, but we are in the process and very close to having a financial operations handbook, which is very much needed, identifying the processes and the policies on purchasing and accounts payable and accounts receivables, and that will be a huge, again, it's been a huge lift, and I know the business office have been working very hard on that. And we talked about, yes, not only do we have to evaluate and improve the annual review process, we need to manage it, monitor it, all of the above. Strengthening employee engagement, trust, and the overall culture. I think we can all agree a year ago, we have come so far in this last year with improving communication, improving relationships, improving the relationship with the unions and the administrators. And I personally can say my own personal opinion is literally 180. I mean, we have really come a long way. And I will also say a lot of that is thanks to Dr. Clark. So, and the open communication that we now have. Having said that, we have a way to go. We are moving in the right direction and building the culture, and you'll see with some of this the panorama data how we can go about doing that. One of the things I'm really looking forward to that Dr. Clark has talked about is we're going to be starting and implementing a strategic plan. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm sure those of us that have been in the work world, we hear strategic plan and you just know how much work that is, but then it's important work, and it is how do you. Sorry, I'm in the Moana phase at the moment because I'm Samoan and my cousin happens to be in the movie. So I'm like, okay, we have to have our plan, and we have to be able to follow where we're going and know what's going on, and you can't do that without a strategic plan. So thanks for letting me throw in that. Hi, Michael. Yeah, thank you.
You don't know where you're going, won't you?
Yeah, you won't get there, absolutely. And if you don't have a plan on how to get there, you don't even know if you ever, how you're doing. So those are the big, the gaps and the plan on kind of the overviewing plan of how to keep going around. I'm so sorry. With that, the panorama data, talk a little bit about because it does look a lot different than the panorama data for students. And I will say it is much I don't wanna say smaller, but there's only a few things in the survey that we are talking about. So specifically for staff, we do the survey in fall and spring. We measure cultural awareness and action, belonging, and the school climate. Those are the three things in the staff section of the survey we evaluate. The teacher survey measures 5 things: educating all students, cultural awareness and action, belonging, the school climate, and faculty growth mindset. This is the graph and the data for the staff results. And we went back to fall of 23. And then the last survey was spring of 25-26. So even Daisy, who is, I will say, I didn't get a very good grade in statistics in college, but even I can look at this and say, hey, look, the numbers are going up. That's fantastic. Yes, so the numbers are and have gone up from cultural awareness from 60 to 76. Belonging, we're up 14 points. School climate, we are up 13 points. So we have consistently over the last 3-4 years been improving that staff's interpretation and opinions on these areas have been steadily improving, which is great to see.
These are percentiles, right?
Correct. Oops, going right again. Okay, so I just said all of these. It's great. This is the teacher survey results, which again, as we reminding you, there are 5 areas from educating students, cultural awareness, belonging, and they also have faculty growth mindset, which is the one area that has lost points or has lost confidence. I don't want to say that in the last 4 years or 3-4 years. Sorry, one more
From
time.
beginning,
Oh, yeah, great.
I was the latest from this, yeah, like last 2 things.
Thank you. So, some of the reasons for that were, and I'm actually this is just talking about the numbers and where they are and that they dipped a little bit, but I want to take it to the actual open-ended comments, which I thought were very, very helpful in understanding how are we and where we want to go. The comments, there were several of them that intersect that they talk about. They like the trainings. So for example, I'll use the anti-racism. Last year, we did a fabulous job and every employee in our district was trained and went through the anti-racism training. So the feedback was training is fabulous, training is great. Now we need to know how to implement it in the classroom. We want to take it to action steps. We've learned a lot and now how do we make it actually important and in our everyday to day life? Not just know how to talk about what what racism is and its types of things. So, sorry, I'm trying to read that one. With broader and more integrated approaches, again, they want to talk more about actually paying attention to cultures beyond. One of the comments was beyond just Black or African American focus, that there's so much more than just race to differentiate between, and taking a much more broad and integrated approach is kind of a common theme on the comments. The comments talked about, oh, my screen, half of it is showing pictures of that stuff there, it's fine. Okay, so the most recent comments include both positive feedback and skepticism. Like I said, the comments were that we're doing a great job, and other comments at the same time were saying that we need stronger oversight and facilitation. So they were kind of at different points and wanting more clarity about purposes, outcomes, expectations. Those were comments that were made. some of the shifting that happened in the 23-24, the comments were more about lack of time, lack of training, lack of opportunity. Now the comments are more about, we need them embedded in everyday life. We need them to be more than a one-time conversation. It's not just that we haven't had the time to do them and we haven't had structured opportunities to do them. We've done them, but now we need to integrate them into everyday and not just a one-time conversation. So overall, the key takeaways, I believe on the monitoring report is, legally, yes, we are maintaining legal compliance. Our safety and our security, our crisis team, are those measures, yes, they're being trained on, I mean, on our badges, we have, yes, we are being trained on hold, secure, lockdown, evacuate, shelter. We have those trainings. We are, I love that our crisis team meeting includes people from the, we have the fire department, we have the police department, we have every, I want to say, every administrator, including both from the buildings and here, we have our state, and we have our nurses, we have our facilities people, we have lots of folks involved in that, and so, yes, kudos to G. Murray, who's in charge of that, doing a great job. We've talked about, we need to improve our clarity and our focus on improving policies and procedures, and ensuring that we are consistent with our application. We need to do training on that, to not just design them, but we need people to understand them and implement them. And yes, we need to build the support staff, the panorama data. We need to actually utilize it, look at it, and determine, okay, yes, we're going up. Why are we going up? How do we continue to go up? Or why is faculty mindset on growth suffering? Look at the comments and try to intentionally make goals to improve that. Oh, I didn't even put it, questions. I usually said the end questions. Thank you for letting me do all the talking.
What does the response rate look like on the panorama surveys? Is it consistent? Is it high? Is it low?
It's low. Staff was 94 last year. Teachers were 150, so we're not even at 50%. Excellent question. I should have included that.
Although that's probably representative. All right, it's big enough.
So I just had to run, I had a resident ask me an FTE question, and I just ran a roster. Right now we have 441 filled FTE, we have 71 vacant. So we have about 550 FTE in the district. When you only have less than 200 responses, we need to get that improved. But I also, yeah.
But my thought is it makes it harder to interpret the trends.
Do you know? I'm gonna assume these are anonymous, so there's no way for you to track if the same people are responding to each survey.
They are anonymous.
Yeah.
Any other board comment on the treatment of staff 2.2?
I do thank you for this information, and I do see and feel a difference, like as you mentioned, from last year to this year. And obviously, I'm glad that you see things that we can still improve on and things we need to improve on. And I'm particularly trying to look at the need to do the annual review process and build that out, especially for support staff, who I believe could really use that system as a way to feel supported and feel that they can create goals in their job, because their jobs are vital. And it's also, I know, a challenging job to fill. So I personally don't like annual reviews But
Who does though? Quite
I like-
honestly,
I like-
even HR is like, they're so important, but at the same time, do I?
But how, I like the idea of like, how can we turn this around and make it be about empowerment in your role and like focusing on how important your role is and giving people like agency to understand how impactful they are.
Yeah, one of the really interesting things that I've seen in the industry itself is getting away from a scorecard, getting away from a 1 through 5, and this is where you rate, and get more to what have you accomplished, what have been your challenges, what do you need from your leadership to support. They're called, I was at an organization, we went with they were called the Zellee questions, ZELLEE, and they're 5 questions. And they are not an annual process, they are a quarterly sit down and have a conversation, so. That you are not saving things up until, you know, that year, and that you are also giving good feedback and not just discipline or corrective feedback. People do better when you are, and some people don't want an attaboy, or excuse me, a pat on the back, or they don't want acknowledgement, but they also want to thank you. So yeah, and doing the training with folks on, this is not just, telling you what you're good at and what you need to improve on. This is more of a conversation. And again, making sure that they feel heard at the same time as being evaluated. Yeah.
I would like to brag on Daisy just a little bit. One other thing that she didn't mention in this report is, you know, we have new employee orientation Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, next week. And, you know, we have not done training for new employees except once a year. So we have employees who were hired like last October who have never gone through training, and Daisy has made a switch that after everybody's caught up next week, she's gonna start doing new employee trainings monthly. So people don't have to wait 8 months to find out, you know, how payroll works or how their benefits work or
It's
any of those kinds of things.
Absolutely silly that people that are. So when you say, welcome to new employee orientation, yeah, I know some of you were hired in August of last year, so you've literally been here a year, but you didn't come to last time.
Yeah.
So it'll be great.
That's a great change.
Although Joe said we might get away, start it every month, and maybe we learn we only need every other month, or we need. We definitely need more in summer. Our prime hiring is in the summer. But what we also need to do is not let everybody wait till these last 2 weeks before, sorry, I'm tired. Last 2 weeks before school starts. I'm sure you experienced this as well. Everybody wants to come in and onboard and sign up for benefits in these last 2 weeks. Okay, we just hired 85 people and y'all want to come in this week? Thank you.
Thank you. My reflection on the monitor report is that, you know, we're a citizen board. And we don't come with knowledge of HR. We don't know about, you know, educational administration and all those things. So it is really helpful, as you had in the report, to have a graph showing how things are going over time. And so it is great to see that things are headed in the right direction. So thank you.
I didn't intend, and I intentionally, because it was a lot of wording, but I would really encourage you to take a look at some of the wonderful things that we have done. There's an excellent list of, I'll just brag about one. Our HR on site is a new initiative we did this year where we actually went out to each school every month. We were in a school building, in all the school buildings, so that we had office hours and HR went to the buildings. And it was a huge success and people just felt so heard. And granted, at maybe the end of the school year, we only had maybe 5 or 6 people come each time, where before it was maybe 9 or 10 people coming in. But it was a huge success, and it built some privilege.
Just say one thing on your path to improvement, it seems like the employee handbook is number one. That's an important priority. I've seen that be a legal document in many cases, and it's in compliant right now. With the 4 of those, start there, then the other ones are big lists too, but that would be my first priority.
Yeah, I cringe. It's like, and now everybody's gonna go read the family medical stuff, but yeah, no.
All right, is there any other board questions on this monitor report? I would entertain a motion to monitor treatment of staff 2.2 using the rubric provided in the board materials. Dan moves,
Second.
Michelle seconds. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this rubric. And so I'm gonna ask each person in turn, and they're just gonna give me a depending on whether it's the first two, where it's a 0 to 4, or the last one, which is just a yes or no. I realized that I've lost my pen.
Bring him in.
All right, so the first element is the monitoring report itself. You know, to what extent does it explain the interpretation of the policy by the superintendent? To what extent does it provide evidence for what its conclusions are? So I will start with you, Oliver. 0 not compliant all the way up to 4 advanced compliance.
3.
All right. Moment.
3. Can I ask a question?
Oh,
Okay, so are we on, the report is consistent, is compliant, or what the report conclusion is, which is that we are, what is it not?
Approaching.
Approaching, or that would be a 2 in this case, an agreement with the report.
If you, so I think that if the report said we were approaching compliance and you wanted to agree with that, it would be in the next part, which is like, where are we? So
Yeah,
the
it's the
first thing is
report versus the outcome. So
Okay.
report is, does it give you enough information
Okay.
to understand whether or not the outcome?
I'm
is-
scaling
yeah,
the report right now.
Yes, yeah.
And then 3 is,
It's a lot to scan through.
I don't have that scale in front of me, I'm sorry, I'm not be prepared. What was 3 again?
Proficient compliance, yeah. Normally they print out 1 copy for all the board members.
I know, yeah, they don't.
Want me to go make that?
It's very-
I'm leaning towards 3 or 4, in the 3 or 4 range. I don't know if the other board members want to go, but being my first one, that's where I am. Can I do 3.5?
Would the board like me to read out what's in front of me, or?
I don't know, if is there a way for Tom to access it, so you can?
I'll just go make a.
Okay.
Real quick, do you see it?
Is it on? This is it, what you should provide.
No, it's not. It's on the website.
Page 7 of the 2.2 treatment of staff, asking you to correct. Those?
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah. Yeah.
There it is. Excellent,
It
yeah.
has beginning compliance, approach compliance.
Oh, that's,
Do you
no,
see it?
well, that's actually.
Well, no, that's it,
That's the
literally just the
superintendent.
word. Yeah.
But that's the
just-
superintendent's about, that's not the same one we use.
Oh.
Oh, oh.
Fine.
Did do the reading, I swear.
No, it typically is like here for us, and I just recycled all of my old ones like today, so otherwise I had like 15 in here that I could have handed out.
Yeah, it's the same one.
Do you want to go down there, look online while I wait for that?
Daisy took it from me.
We have a pause.
But I think you were on the right track. No, I mean, you're on whatever track you want to be on. I'm just saying.
Except for the 3.5.
We're going through timely and treatment and response and then fair and non-discriminatory. No, we're not doing that, but we're using the scale in that table.
It's the
that
same
you
scale,
provided.
but this is the superintendent's monitoring them.
I'd safely say proficient, but I could be persuaded to advance. I don't know what the consequence of these numbers are either. Okay.
Not much of a concept.
Well, the monitor reports are the primary way where we evaluate the superintendent's performance.
But what I meant
Really,
when I
the
said-
district's performance for which the superintendent is accountable. This is our accountability system under policy governance.
And it's another example of something that could be brought to an 8th grade level and probably would be better for it.
I don't know if this is an 8th grade level the report is, but I'm comfortable with it. Having seen this rubric, so, okay.
All right, so I'll move to field 4. Okay, I'm a 3. Emily,
3.
Michelle,
Or,
Alyssa,
or,
Dan. Alright. So the next thing is the actual outcomes. So I will start, actually, I go in the opposite direction when I do the other one. So, on the district outcomes, Dan, 0 to 4, where are you?
2.
Okay, so I just want to say this out loud for the record. So Dan said 2, Alyssa said 2, Michelle said 2,
2.
Emily says 2. I'll agree with the assessment of 2. 2. Tom says 2. Moment.
Yep.
2. Oliver, 2. Okay, great. And then, is the compliance plan acceptable? So, do the steps, you know, outlined in, closing the gaps, are those. So I will start with you, Oliver.
I give it a 3.
Oh, and in this case, it's just yes or no.
Yes, yes.
Moment,
Yes.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Emily,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Alyssa,
Yes.
Dan.
Yes.
Great, okay. The next item on the agenda is treatment of community 2.1.
Thank you, Daisy.
Thank you,
Very
everyone.
much.
Yay, you're my bell.
I misspoke. The next item on the agenda is monitor report 2.1, treatment of students and parents guardians.
I'm sharing my screen. Oh, so. This is treatment of students and parents guardians, executive limitations 2.1. Again, the beginnings slides that Jen put together for us. This is what we're doing. And I'm going to rate this one approaching compliance also. And there are some big gaps here. Our student engagement and belonging measures have declined over time. The response and resolution times are not measured district-wide. Complaints, concerns, resolutions, and corrective actions are not centrally tracked. We track them, but not centrally. The district does not consistently document whether communications are understood or how student and family input influence decisions. Privacy, accessibility, and security video implementation data are incomplete. We are doing it properly, but again, it's the collection of those reports. And evidence is not yet consistently collected across schools and departments. Path to improvement looks like this. We are going to monitor belonging goals in every school and district continuous improvement plan. In fact, that is every building's CIP this year and the district CIP. And you'll notice that when Monica left and we refilled the position, we changed the title to include the word belonging. It is Director of Equity, Belonging, and Family Engagement to address this very thing. We're going to establish clear expectations for acknowledging, responding to, and resolving concerns. We're going to implement consistent complaint and concern tracking. We're going to review communications and forms for clarity, accessibility, and minimum necessary information collection. We're going to strengthen documentation of student and family input. We're going to track privacy, accessibility, and security video implementation more consistently. We're going to use common annual evidence submissions from schools and departments, and we've already implemented the Director of Equity, Belonging, and Family Engagement role. And the new Welcome Center is being constructed as we speak with new folks there. It's going to take a little bit of time to get that rolled out, but we are in the process. So these are the key takeaways of this. We do have many practices in place to support respectful treatment of students and families, but our documentation, the consistency, the monitoring across schools, or the central collection of that is weak. We focus on how students and families are treated. EL 2-1 focuses on how families and students are treated. Treatment is supposed to be equitable, time clear, dignified, and not unnecessarily intrusive. Again, I think we do that well. We just don't have the data and communication or documentation to show that well at this point. The video procedures were updated and they are being treated as role restricted, purpose limited, and logged. We don't have complete access log and audit evidence yet. Again, you remember we made that change to our policy sometime after the new year. And by the time we got it implemented, it was near the end of the school year. So it's me, I did not think to keep a record of every time somebody asked me for video logs. The process was they'd send an email to a bunch of people, including me and the tech guys, and we'd say, yes, you have the ability to do that. And I would just file the emails. I would not keep a list. And that's changed since we've gone to the new policy. But we're talking about last year, we did not do it well. So what you all are probably most interested in is our data, the trend data. And we do surveys with these panorama surveys that Daisy talked about for staff. We also do for students and we also do for families. The K-5 student surveys are completed the fall and the winter and the spring. Grades 6 through 12 are completed in the fall and the spring. There was one winter administration in 23-24. And we make comparisons between the same seasons because student perceptions may vary during the school year. Students are generally happier in the fall than they might be in the spring. I think all of us are.
Except for June. They might be happiest most
Correct.
then.
These percentages represent positive responses, not overall response rates. So let's take a look at them. This is our K-5 fall trends, and you'll see there are questions that get to engagement. And these again, how engaged do you feel at school? How safe do you feel at school? And how much do you feel like you belong at school? So the fall surveys from 24-25 to 25-26 dropped or no change. And that engagement at 41% of our K-5 students are reporting that they feel engaged at school. That's not acceptable, not acceptable. The winter surveys. I think you'll see why we are making this a big goal of our CIP. Spring surveys. Nah. So grades K-5 areas for further review. Why has our engagement declined, particularly in the winter? What factors are contributing to the decline? Are the trends consistent across all three elementary schools? I showed you combined. I did not break it down by elementary school. Are particular grades or students experiencing difficulty? Again, I did not differentiate that for you in the charts. What practices appear to be protecting students? Generally stable perceptions, and which existing efforts are producing stronger engagement. So good. Yeah.
So are you gonna return to this and kind of like zoom out, big picture, like what's your interpretation of what's going on after we look at the 6-12 data?
Today? No. Nope, I'm gonna report how we're doing, and then we are having discussions internally about first of all, what we put in place with our CIP, what we put in place with our new director, who will be analyzing this further, and we're not there yet. I have the measures from last year, but we don't have the big picture yet. So grades 6 through 12. Look at engagement. 21%. 21% of our students report they feel engaged at school. 47% feel they belong.
May I ask a question? Is this a common tool that other schools use as well? The same question and structure, how it's asked the kids?
Yeah, the panorama survey, it's a very popular survey that's used around the country, and the questions are all, you can adjust the questions a little bit, but mostly they're common throughout them. But these are reports of our own kids. These are not percentiles nationally. 21% of our kids say that they feel engaged, grade 6 through 12, say that they feel engaged in school.
It would be interesting to see how that compares to the national benchmark.
Yeah, that would be. Spring survey. You're gonna see the same thing.
Is that information that's available? Can you request like a national benchmark for?
Yep. Yes.
Last year, we looked at the engagement metric a lot with the high school staff, and I think it was either bottom 10 or bottom 20 percentile. Actually,
Wow.
they didn't go more specific than that, but
So, and
I thought that's what we were looking at, actually, is the percentile rate. So this is just local percentile.
Yep. So we can get that, I can get that out to you, but like Moment said, Moment knows more than I do about this. I see this, I see it shocking, quite frankly. School is a great place to be. More than 22% should say that they're engaged, and I don't know what that is. Some may attribute it to, well, kids don't take these seriously. I think you have to take it at face value, right? Kids are taking the survey, you've got to take what they're saying at face value.
It was below the 10 percentile last year, then we're even below that now because the trend is down.
But I guess the context for the discussion is like, it could be that. Kids nationally report engagement of 40%, and so the fact that we're at 30%.
Right.
It has to be viewed in that light as opposed to comparing it to 100.
Right, yeah, I don't think you'll ever get 100%, but I think that you should be over 50. Right?
And also, no matter what the national percentage is, we have our own personal district goals.
We do have our own goals, and I'm gonna speak off the cuff here. Just, again, I've been here for a year, and some of the things that I notice. Some I think are Vermont things, some I think might be South Burlington things. I see what I would consider to be like a lack of. Symbols and rituals. What I mean by that is, we don't have a fight song, we don't have a fight song, we don't have an alma mater. Those kinds of things that are so typical in places where I came, that's what, when kids talk about, I feel engaged. We don't have a pep band. It might sound silly, it might sound goofy, but when kids are involved in those kinds of things, and there's a band that can play at a football game or a soccer game, that builds those kind of sense of belonging when you're in a group. We do all kinds of things, so I'm not saying we're doing this poorly, but I think there are many more things that we can do that would make our kids feel like, hey, I want to come to school today, this is gonna be awesome.
Do you want to stop building a proud tradition and just start having it? That's our.
Oh, yeah, we've been building it for a long time, yeah.
We haven't built it, yeah, so it's time to actually implement some strong traditions, and that's why I mentioned to cover you, I would love to expand our music program next year, because I want to fight song, I want a pep band, and I want, that kind of thing. The number one thing I would do every year, I take popsicles out to the kids at band camp, and they love that, it became part of the thing, but with my band camp, because we're on the marching band, and I know nobody has a marching band, but people have pep bands,
one thing that we kind of struggled with last year in particular is, so we were seeing just even in sports games, student sections weren't kids weren't coming to those, or things like that weren't as popular. And so then we, spoke with the stat about the administration in the high school about things like our pep rallies also aren't being attended as much. And then we had a winter carnival thing that we did every year, which for some students is really great. For others, they were great, I can skip school today.
Yeah.
And so last year, Allie and I were working with the SBC3 on how can they help us on the winter carnival in particular. And then we found out we're not doing that this year because our attendance every year is a record low on that day.
Yeah. So
it's a mix of, we are not as we go on, we're having less and less of these events because it feels like there's no school spirit. So it's hard to justify, having an event for 15 kids who are showing up, but it's also saying, how do you fix it without it's a bit of, it's a circular reasoning.
Yeah, and I am a believer that it's absolutely possible to do, and I think it's, again, it's rituals and it is symbols. And I think when you have those, they grow up. We're starting a ritual that I'm really proud of, and the elementary principals are on board and they're just been great about it. That on October 2nd, at the football game, we're gonna have our first ever kindergarten night at the football game. We're getting print shirts, class of 2031 for each of our kindergartners. We're inviting them in with their families and we're gonna introduce them at the beginning of the game. Hey, welcome to class of 2031. They're gonna walk across the field. They're gonna have a t-shirt, and it's gonna be awesome. And we'll do that every year. And, but they'll have their first wolf gear. And I think that kind of stuff, when it becomes tradition, I think people look back on that, right?
When he's 41,
I
right?
was gonna say 2030.
Oh, yeah, I don't even.
It'll be right on the t-shirt.
Really smart kindergartners.
Let's get it right before.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Whatever.
Otherwise, you'll have to shift it to the first grade class.
No, it's like, I go to the eighth graders, you couldn't fit into the.
Yeah, I better.
No,
I better expect
I'm
you
just
to-
throwing that.
Be embarrassing. I'm sure we got it right.
You're hitting on something from the citywide. In South Burlington, we don't do July 4th, we don't do parades, we don't do St. Patty's Day, we don't do New Year's, so maybe we just need to start having more actual traditions and stop building them, so I like that, like what you're saying.
Yeah, there should be a parade, and a high school band should be leading that parade, and you should be on a car, wait with. Should be out passing out flyers.
But it is
I'll
interesting,
throw the
that
candy.
you mentioned it about Vermont, maybe it's a Vermont
Yeah.
thing, and I do feel like there are things about the culture in Vermont. I love Vermont, I've lived here my whole life and but I do feel a little bit disconnected from a lot of the rest of the country and I'll see things in the country happening, like giant pep rallies, and I'm like, I don't even understand that, because we don't see those kinds of things here. So I like the idea of you bringing some of your things that you've been used to and seeing if we can like infuse it in South Burlington as well. I mean, they don't do the floats anymore either, do they? The at homecoming building
Not
floats.
earlier, no.
Yeah, no.
New talent show.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
now.
people love the talent show, right? And that's one of those traditions. It's
So,
like just.
I mean, does anybody, like, when you get the results for this, do we ever go back and ask the students how they can feel more engaged or?
We are now, we have
I
a
would-
superintendent
I would
advisory council.
Love to talk about that. Last year, we saw the engagement was the one we focused on. We saw when Monica gave a report that we were in the bottom 10% now nationally, and so we went back and worked with Mr. Berg there. So we basically created a like discussion questions that all the students had in their advisories that were guided by their advisor. Or for our freshman class, their peer leaders, so senior like mentors who were with them the whole year, and it was something along the lines of like in the classes where you feel engaged, what's working well, in the classes that you're not feeling engaged, what's not working, like if you could change one thing, things like that. And then the advisor were supposed to like facilitate that conversation and also take down notes on, I think at the end we had them say like a wrap question of like if there was 3 things you could change, like what would they be? And then they reported that back to us. Ally and I went to the staff meeting in the high school and reported those findings and like the main things back to the staff. And the feedback that we got from them, from a lot of the staff, were that a lot of the stuff we were saying sounded like a lot of the best practices that they were being taught, like in their whatever the teacher days are. But it felt different coming from like students saying it than whatever training they're doing. So that we were hopeful that was gonna make a difference. And then the next panorama, which was our sort of didn't do anything, went down. So,
Yeah,
we got a lot of good feedback, but might not.
and it's slow, but it's slow, but it's also a snowball, right? I mean, when you start building those things and more build, I mean, and then. Again, my philosophy is when kids are in charge and kids are not running the building, but running the building, when kids have say, and this is what we want to do, and we support that. I think great, we have a ton of great things we do, but we need to do more because this is just not acceptable.
And getting the community involved too,
Yeah.
and building, like, when you went out to talk to everyone about a school, this is,
Yeah.
the school district is this is the community, and more people could make it, you know.
And what do the response rates look like for the kids generally?
Oh, I think I might have those in here somewhere. If I don't, I'll get them to you. Oh, here you go, number 524 for the K5. 523, 487, and 506 for the, there were 3 different surveys, so that's 566 and 633 for our 612. So that's about 70. It's a little, that's almost half, not quite half.
16-12.
Yeah, about 200 kids a class. So, yeah, I mean, and one would assume that the ones that weren't engaged in the survey,
Right, you wouldn't think there'd
the
be
engaged
extra.
kids for everything in the room. I think it's right. I'm just guessing. All right, spring survey, same story. So these need to be higher.
One thing I remember that we were, that it was like for the last survey in the spring of last year, we saw lower rates or lower response rates from the seniors and maybe the juniors as well, because we had them in the same week as AP tests. So it was like, you know, a lot of kids aren't in school on certain days, or it's not the first thing on their mind is to fill out the panorama survey. But
You know,
that's
They're administered in school, take home whenever they want.
it. I think for us,
I know
they email it to us, but there's time in school to do it if you want to do it later.
we
you
email,
can.
I know we emailed all parents.
Yeah, so there's time to do it
Okay, sorry.
in school if you want to, but if you want to do it outside of class, you can as well.
Maybe have a specific class for the surveys.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, and I also think it's not a measurement problem, it's a true engagement problem, and I think that we can do a better job measuring, but we also can do a better job making a more positive experience for our kids.
Their completion rate bonuses can bias responses, but if you really want to get 80%, you could say school-wide, if you get 80%, then you get, what do you want, popsicles, so they're.
No, we have a wellness policy, we have no policies. That's part of the engagement.
I don't know if administering, you know, if administering 3 surveys a year, K through 5 is like common throughout the nation.
I don't know that.
It's like a lot of surveys.
It does seem like a lot of spending. Okay. So, I mean, I talked a little bit more about the same stuff. Let's go into the families now. Family trends. So the questions here, we're talking about barriers to engagement, school climate and school fit. Again, so these numbers are good. So like a 79% means that families do not feel barriers to being engaged. 79 is a good number, right? 65% say they do feel the school climate is good. 61% do feel that the school is a good fit. So family ratings are higher than our students. And you know, we can see how they go. They vary, but not that much between the years. Family survey in the spring, same deal, but they're still in the same order. Some questions you can ask, but really, and I think we're very wise to have made this a focus in our CIP. And I think that I think that these, quite honestly, I think this is not, this is low hanging fruit. A lot of this stuff is just low hanging fruit to get kids to feel engaged. So other evidence that we reviewed, you know, we do great with handbooks and websites and those sorts of things. We don't measure I mean, we know that we present a lot of communication. I don't think we do a good job of measuring how well that communication is received, if that makes sense. You know about the IEPs, the problems we have with special education that we're working on. All right. These are additional, so this is a plus delta of what we do well and what we're not doing well. So we are this is the additional safeguards and evidence. So one of the parts of this. Of the executive limitation is the whole camera thing, and we're not gonna be invasive and those kind of things. So what we do well, we absolutely, we follow FERPA and confidentiality and those kinds of things. We do not do a great job of. Keeping data and of trainings and incidents and all those kinds of things. We do have accommodations in private meeting spaces, but we don't, our requests and responses are not centrally tracked, and we still have that wheelchair issue that I do believe has been solved with Lissa and her team. We have the high school student, who is, being taken care of for when he's in the gym, and there's an emergency, how do we get him out of the gym? And they've done a nice job working on that. So the security video, again, we have a new policy. Last year, I did a poor job of making the logs. This year, will be better. I've reminded everybody that has access to the cameras. I shared with them the log again, so sure we'll be fine with that. And, you know, again, complaints, right? There's multiple ways for people, parents to express complaints and concerns. We don't have really a way yet that we centrally collect that, so I can provide you data. Hey, in September, 13 parents complained about this or this or this. We haven't figured that out yet. So why is it approaching? Safeguards exist around all the components, but the outcomes are mixed or low, I would say, and other things that we're just not consistently collecting or monitoring. So what are we doing? Well, already the CIP I talked about, these are in our plans, so we are absolutely going to be focused on those. The Welcome Center is coming along, and the diesel director. I think these are all three really good steps with the equity, belonging, and family engagement coordinator. What do we need to continue doing? Monitoring school and district belonging goals, establishing responses and follow-ups of expectations. These things I've said already. Reviewing our communications forms, practices, etc. So that's the report. Questions?
Love at some point to hear about family engagement specifically, not necessarily as a representative.
Right.
But just kind of in that informal way that you provided some kind of status updates on IEPs and things like that.
Yeah.
Not urgent, just a high interest area. And partly a curiosity about, you know, when we look at engagement numbers like we just looked at, I think it's pretty clear that it's never one source, right? But what are some of those possible sources? And to me, that seems like a really nice approach to try to work on engagement through families and involving families in appropriate ways. Not inappropriate, in appropriate ways. And I had a question too, on engagement, and I guess it's kind of a loaded question, but just a wonder, you know, we've learned a lot about proficiency-based grading and grading systems with the 50% and all of that. I am curious if there's any speculation on that being any part of the equation of engagement, in the sense that if students feel like they don't need to set high expectations, does that affect their engagement?
Yeah.
Because we did hear from the whole group of peer leaders from the middle school even about their worries about going into high school, not having a real sense of whether or not they were going to be able to meet those expectations because of certain things. I don't want to put it all on proficiency-based grading because that's not my thing. Just throwing out as those things that set a stage for a perception, even if it's not reality, of having had lower expectations over the last X number of years.
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I teach grad school, I teach a school improvement class, and I speak with my students there often about, I will hear of them say that the biggest problem we have with our achievement, whatever is bad attendance. And I always push back that is bad attendance causing poor achievement, or is poor achievement causing bad attendance? In other words, which is the symptom and which is the disease?
Right.
And I think, it may be that there's a lack of, that maybe this perception that we hear that, kids can turn papers in multiple times, or there's no, that kind of lack of pressure leads to poor engagement, or maybe it's, if they were engaged more, they would report more favorably on those kinds of things. I don't know.
Right.
I know what we can control immediately is symbols and rituals that get kids involved in school.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Board questions on the monitor report?
Should have had me go first. This is a little more depressing than the staff. But we'll get there. I do know this. I know I trust our team with great leadership, and we are going to get there. No doubt.
It is a great call out that when Panorama and similar tools have national benchmarking, we should get those. If if you have longitudinal data and you also have national benchmarking, that's really like, that feels a lot more complete. I would entertain a motion to monitor report 2.1 treatment of students and parents, guardians, according to the policy monitoring rubric that was provided in the board material.
Second.
Dan moves, Emily seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll start with Oliver, and we're gonna do the monitoring report first. So it's a 0 to 4.
3.
All right. Moment.
3.
Okay, 3. All right. I'm a 2 because of the lack of the national benchmark. I think that would really contextualize the 20%.
Gotcha.
Emily,
3.
Michelle, Emily's 3, Michelle is 3, Alyssa? 3. Dan? 3. Okay, now we'll go on to the district outcomes. And we will start with Dan.
Approaching.
Which is 2. Okay, Alyssa?
2.
Michelle?
2.
Emily?
2.
I'm a 2, Tom, 2. Moment?
2.
Oliver? 2. Okay. All right, and then we'll do compliance plan acceptable. This is just a yes or a no, so we'll start with the Oliver.
Yes.
Moment?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Emily?
Yeah.
Michelle?
Yes.
Alyssa?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
All right, that concludes our monitoring.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report, review of summer work.
Yep. I'm just gonna read this so I don't forget anything, if that's okay. I want to take a few minutes tonight to give you a sense of the amount of work that's been happening across the district this summer. Summer is a lot different when kids are not here, but it's not a quiet time for the district. A tremendous amount of facilities work, technology work, professional learning and planning has been underway. On the facility side, we've had significant work happening in every building. Some projects are complete, some are underway, and others will continue into the remaining weeks of summer or are dependent on permits. At the high school, that's included work on the gym roofs, the rooftop air handlers, the heating systems and univents, the second floor girls' bathroom, the pottery room and kiln ventilation, and stormwater work. The gym and stage floors have been refinished and repairs to the damaged brick facade have been completed. At Tuttle, the upstairs bathroom renovation and asbestos abatement and new flooring in a second floor classroom have been major projects. The gym and stage floors have been refinished, and we also have door replacement and stormwater work underway or planned. At Rick Marcotte, the gym roof is being replaced with additional work involving heating valves, air handling equipment, fencing, sidewalks, playground areas, and other site improvements. And the gym and stage floors have also been refinished, and the staff room renovation is complete. At Chamberlain, the pre-K carpet replacement is complete. Additional carpet work is scheduled and playground maintenance is planned. At Orchard, we've installed a new boiler. We're replacing heating valves. We have roof work coming and are completing sidewalk warranty work and other projects. So there's a lot happening behind the scenes to get our buildings ready for students and staff. Our technology team has also had a substantial summer workload. Our team's been checking classroom technology throughout the district, inspecting every Chromebook, pulling damaged devices for repair, and completing our Chromebook replacement inventory. They've also been doing infrastructure work, including network switch replacement and reorganization of our switch closets, as well as work on the district print server and other systems. A lot of that work is invisible when it goes well, but it's essential to having schools ready to operate on day one. And by the way, we also moved buildings, offices, which is a huge undertaking by Team Rainer team. And the third area I want to highlight is instructional administrative planning. Our administrators spent several days together this summer working on the systems that will support our CIP and our academic, social, emotional, and special ed goals for 26-27. Our district goals include improving STAR math and literacy outcomes, increasing student belonging as measured through Panorama, and meeting our special ed compliance expectations. A major emphasis has been strengthening our PK-12 MTSS system, multi-tiered systems of support. We are continuing to establish common universal practices across schools, developing a district MTSS oversight structure, and creating a more consistent progress monitoring cycle so that beginning, middle, and end of year data are actually used to inform what we do with students. During our July 20th to 22nd principal planning sessions, we worked specifically on creating greater consistency in the use of EduClimber and establishing a common district-wide calendar for reviewing math, literacy, and Panorama data. We have additional MTSS and data decision-making professional learning plan for teachers and administrators during the year. We also spent significant time this summer on special ed systems and responsibilities, clarifying who's responsible for referrals, LEA functions, staffing, supervision, evaluations, out of district placements, and referrals for related services. That may not sound particularly exciting, but creating clear systems and accountability is an important part of addressing some of the compliance issues we've discussed with the board. So taken together, this has been a pretty busy summer. There's still work to complete before students arrive, and some facilities projects will continue beyond the opening of school. But I do appreciate the work of our facilities, technology, instructional, student services, and administrative teams who've been doing great work to get us ready for another successful year. Been a busy time. People ask me often, do superintendents work year round? For summer off?
Do they sleep?
No, we don't.
May I comment?
Please.
I just wanted to add a couple things. Joe did a great job highlighting a lot of the work that's been done across our district facilities this summer. First, I want to say thank you for the shout out to our IT team. You are so correct in that, like, they are so integral to the work that we do to keep our buildings open and everybody accessing everything they need to, and get very little recognition for keeping all those plates spinning for us, and they do a lot of that work. I also, again, about our facilities team, is due to the gracious budget that our taxpayers are willing to approve and give us to help us maintain our buildings. We spend a shockingly large amount of money on maintaining our buildings and keeping them in conditions that are safe and secure for the students of the district. Kudos to our director of facilities for keeping all of those projects going, because there are so many of them and so many vendors. His relationship with all of those vendors is what makes that magic happen. So I'm grateful to have him on our team. Frankly, I don't know what we would do without Bart Baselli. But one of the things that percolated up to you folks a few months ago before the end of the school year was a concern from the staff in the high school about the girls' restroom on the second floor. I'm sure you guys know about that. It was really awful.
It was dark and kind of gross, frankly. And so we've put about $50,000 into that space, which is like, holy mackerel, I can't believe it cost $50,000 to renovate a restroom. But $20,000 was invested in the installation, purchase and installation of all new fixtures. So that's all new toilets and all new sinks in there, all new walls, all the never can remember the name, like the walls in between the spaces. And they took out the ceiling, put in new light fixtures and new ceiling tiles, and they painted everything. So we are frequently limited of the work that we can do because of the asbestos that is in our buildings. They frequently use asbestos in many aspects, including flooring, and then like gluing things into place and so forth. So that did limit us a little bit in that space, but I've been in contact with the staff member who was sort of the speaker of the house regarding that concern in the high school, and shared with her where we were at. I think they're going to be really pleased in what it looks like now. We didn't solve all the problems, but I'd say we're probably 95% of the way there. So I'm really grateful that that work was able to be completed this summer. So
That's amazing. I heard Joe mention it in his, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
hallelujah.
I remember maybe my first time doing the donuts and discussion, where last year, and a parent came in and a parent talked about that
Oh,
bathroom
yeah,
for
yeah.
a long time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just students or teachers or staff, it was even parents were concerned about it. So
Yeah, that
that's-
wasn't great,
yeah.
yeah. They put a fresh coat of paint on all the walls in there, but one of the things that I enjoyed in that restroom was the students had done some artwork in there. And so I hope that, and I asked the staffers if we can make that magic happen again, because anywhere that we can put student artwork it just makes it a better space. So it looks great. I'm really happy and proud about that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Deidre, you and your whole staff.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the board about the superintendent's report? Thank you, Superintendent. We'll move on to consent agenda. So there is one, beyond the consent agenda, there's one action, we have to take, so maybe we'll start by doing that. So, I would entertain a motion to approve the AP voucher check to Dell Marketing LP in the amount of $328,267.50. To Vermont Mechanical in the amount of $192,707.26. To Howard Center in the amount of $89,878.45, and Power School Group LLC in the amount of $77,766.62.
I moved.
Emily moves. Tom seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. And are there any objections to the rest of the consent agenda?
I'll just,
Objection is a strong word, but in the minutes, it did state that I joined the board after you guys voted, but I wasn't actually sworn in until the following Monday. I don't think it matters, but
I think that's worth fixing.
I sent you a command about it.
Yeah, I saw that. I'll make sure to go on that.
Happy to vote with it as is, just noting that. I didn't join.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
All right,
is this, about all the expenses, is that what you were?
yeah, so now we're on to.
There was the one, like, the one was totally explained and that was fine, but there was the other one that I asked you about. I mean, do we want to discuss that one line item?
Which one?
Not the Japanese books.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is what it is. I've made it relatively clear that we shouldn't be spending tax dollars on food for staff except in very limited situations. For example, at convocation, I am planning on providing light refreshments for staff. It's the entire staff together for the first day. And I've asked, folks not to spend money for other things, and somebody did, in the process of that happening. There are lots and lots and lots of POs to the point where we are not catching them before they happen, and sometimes they happen after the purchase, which shouldn't happen either, and that's why that happened. It was, it shouldn't have been done, and I don't have a response to it other than,
But
it shouldn't have been done.
we're taking steps to make sure it doesn't.
We are taking steps, and I will make that clear again with our staff.
Thank you.
Any other objections to anything, or questions about anything on the consent agenda? Hearing none, it's passed by consent, except of course for the minutes, which Joe knows about.
Yep.
All right, and then, the next item on the agenda is, set agenda for a week from today. So, one of the. Let me get that pulled up. One of the things that I did hear this meeting is, the first reading of a revision to 2.4, the executive limitation 2.4, where the board would consider some of the changes to that executive limitation as proposed by the superintendent around who can sign contracts and some clarification of the language in 2.4. So I would propose that that goes on the agenda.
Wait, so would that be the first reading?
That would be first reading. Yes. Yes, and that is only a first reading if you all are sufficiently comfortable with the first draft that was presented today. But if you wanted a different process, then we wouldn't do it as first reading.
But that's my question is, do we want to have somebody take a pass at whether or not there would be any other recommended edits to that from a board perspective? I'm not saying there would be, I'm just saying for due diligence and completeness sake.
I'd be happy to do that. People want me to do that.
And then would we do a first reading with all the strikeouts in there, like?
So
I don't know what this looks like because I didn't really like even plan in my head.
So generally what people have asked for before is to see a version of the document where it's all the edits have been accepted. And then also a version of the document that has like the edits highlighted. And so I would suggest that we schedule a first reading for discussion at the next meeting. And if I, in going through that carefully, discover stuff in there that I think is not in accordance with the direction that the ANS policy is going in or something like that, then I'll just flag that and we'll just not consider the next reading to be a first reading. We won't, we'll just make sure to do 3 readings after that reading.
But just share a clean and a markup copy.
Yeah.
That'll be perfect.
All right, and then the other thing that I heard a community request to talk about the potential funding deficits that we may see if foundation formula comes in. So this is the, I think the number that's kind of thrown around is like $6 million drop in our budget from the state based on foundation formula.
Yeah, so like FY 29 or 30, I think, yeah.
So is the board amenable to asking somebody to talk about that? Or is it premature or,
No time like the present. I think it would be good.
It would be relatively uninformed in that there is a comprehensive study coming back to the legislature, I believe in December, to update that foundation formula that the email was about. So those numbers were based on the preliminary estimate from a year and a half ago, and we commissioned $300,000 to go deeper into it. So it will be more informed coming this fall prior to the legislative session beginning, but happy to frame a discussion. You might want to bring the Agency of Education in, but I think they're going to be more informed when they get some of the later versions of the report.
I would definitely wait till we have a number that we can actually use.
So maybe that's just the statement to address the parent that expressed the concern, is that we will discuss it in good time because we have this.
Right now,
information from our
that-
center.
okay.
6 million is,
Very preliminary,
figment.
nothing that's.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so we won't put that on the agenda. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for that information that it's being studied. And then I have the agenda here that I will put on screen. Our placeholder for an executive session. Student representative report. So. We have the ends policy review. This would be our first, so this was not a first reading of the ends policy.
Right.
I mean, or you could consider it that, but then we'll have four in the end.
Discussion.
It was a discussion, yeah. So we'll talk about ends policy again. And then I'm gonna change this to be a first reading. For the revised executive limitation 2.4. Going to kind of comment for myself.
We vote on third reading? Or we vote on second reading?
Third.
Was this to be a public forum? Also? I believe on our ends policy update site, we said
And I
it
thought
would
we
be
were doing that for the next.
the next two, yeah.
Second community forum, yep. So,
Seems rational to put it after the first reading.
it's. And then monthly monitoring report 2.4 and 2.5. So this was part of the board's agreement to do this monthly instead of quarterly.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't think monitoring report is the right word for that. I think it's gonna be a financial report. They'll still do the monitoring report in March. But this will slip your thirst for those,
Like an update on the financial
yep,
stability and.
yep, so you'll get a monthly, and it'll be year to date. The first one might not be because they're still closing a year, but month to date, year to date, where's the money going? And that kind of thing.
And yes, but do we have to monitor those quarterly or semi-annually?
No, so that next week's will not even need to be monitored.
No, I understand that.
Oh, the 4-year ones will not
Yes,
be
quarterly.
once a year, and we'll put those in March, is when they'd like to do them. Yeah.
Incredibly efficient and transparent way to set agendas, so my other boards, it's usually just the chair and the manager a couple a week beforehand, so bravo to
And then it's a surprise to everybody.
It's a surprise. Yeah,
It's a surprise to someone.
Okay. And if you have any other suggestions for agenda items, please send them.
Yeah, I feel like we did a really poor job welcoming Tom to our board this time. Sorry about that. I feel like summertime, it's kind of like vibes are chill. But I don't know, maybe next meeting, or I don't know if it would make more sense, first meeting of the school year, when it might be more attended. You could just like, well, introduce yourself. A lot of people know who you are, but I still would like to have a nice introduction.
Oh my God, with cookies with refreshments.
Maybe I'll eat a cookie.
I think it's a testament to how easily he just moved into that seat and joined the board.
And it might make sense for us all to
We're
introduce
moving on.
ourselves, not just Tom.
Oliver needs to
Yeah,
get.
start,
yeah. And
And again, it might be like the first meeting of the school year.
Yeah.
But I don't know, whatever, that's just.
happy to be here, and I was at the last meeting, so we sort of did that too.
I realized too, we could probably scratch off the future agenda, at least for a bit. So we've had this running, kind of conversation about, working with the legislature, right? So we've kind of,
Well.
that was a very
that'll-
poorly worded, funny.
But the
It's-
notion,
We could check that box, right?
we had lunch, and one thing that has happened when I was on city council, and I do this with other school boards, and I encourage you to plan it for after the November election, it's relevant then. But invite all of the legislators that represent South Burlington and the senators, and you schedule it well in advance, they put it on their calendar, and then you come and you talk about what's pressing on your minds, and then it's top of their minds. So that happened for many years with city council and school board. They get the legislators, and I go to CVU and MMU, they do something similar in December. So if you want to do something like that, it's quite common, we're used to it, and it's a great time to make sure we also know each other, make those connections.
That's cool.
But I do it after the election.
Great. And, you know, one other thing that we might, you know, we've obviously been pretty consumed by the ends policy stuff, but. Earlier this year, we paid the BSBA to go through all of our policies and identify the ones that needed to be revised for state law changes. And so it's a list of 10. And so would the board be amenable to me starting to put maybe them one by one, you know, onto the agenda? So I just work with Joe, we make the required revisions, we plop one at a time on each board meeting.
These are the operational policies.
Yeah, I or do what they want, I'd recommend you do them all at once, let's pull the Band-Aid off and get our updated ones. Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I should ask this first, are you required, when we do first reading, so. In the place that I came from, the first reading was not actually literally read like it is here, is that a requirement that they are actually literally read out loud?
No, I don't think so. Does anybody know otherwise?
Let's check on that. Or which may not, I just think, if you're doing 10, it's gonna take you. If there's 10 different ones, it's gonna take you more than a year.
I've never heard that, seen that. Manually read it.
Yeah, that's what we've done for a few years. That was new to me.
Okay, well, I'll work with Joe and we'll make the recommendation.
Somebody would see that.
I'll just share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. It's South Burlington has 33 of 36 required policies, however, many of your district's policies are out of date. And so, board member conflict of interest, we need to review and update, substitute teachers, review and update. This is what I'm saying, like, it might be better just do this one at a time.
I got you. So, again, I'll do whatever you want. I would recommend maybe get us a subcommittee of the board to do this and get them all reviewed and updated and then adopt them all at once instead of one at a time. Or not.
Who wants to be on
I'll
that
do whatever you
subcommittee?
But I think that, okay, well, you do it.
We'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk.
But the board doesn't object to, like, if you started to see those things, it doesn't seem like people are object to that. Okay. All right, well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Michelle moves,
I was like.
Alyssa seconds, any discussion? Where's Jen?
I have three questions, just one thing.
All those in favor?
I.
All
Aye.
right, we're adjourned, thank you.
Using.
Yeah, yeah.